Well, well, well. Look who it is. You guys. Country Club Mr. Plant coming at you today. All right. Let's see what we got here. Raising money for a class trip. Your class is selling shirts and sweaters, displaying your school logo to raise money for a field trip. How nice is that? Your class needs to raise $1,000 to cover the cost of the trip. For each shirt sold, $2 is raised for the trip. For each sweater sold, $4 is raised for the trip. I bet those are some important numbers here. Let's see. I should talk like a country club member if I'm a country clubber today. Oh, all right, yes. $2 for the shirts. Okay, I bet that's important. I bet this $1,000 is important. And then the sweaters, each sweater, we get $4. Okay, yes. Write an equation that represents the number of shirts and sweaters sold and the amount of money your class needs to raise for the field trip. Let X represent the number of shirts sold and let Y represent the number of sweaters sold. Now, if I'm getting $2 per shirt and I sold 10 shirts, if I said, how much money did you just make for the trip? You would do 2 times 10, 20. Now, I made up the 10 because I'm cool like that. But we're going to do 2 times the number of shirts. And they're telling us to use X for shirts. So we could say 2X. It's going to be the same idea with the sweaters. We get $4 per sweater. So 4 times the sweaters. And we're calling sweaters Y. Why? I don't know. But we have 2X plus the 4Y. This is going to be all the money we generate all together from selling all those shirts and all those sweaters. We need to know when that's going to get us the $1,000 to cover the trip. All right. Find the x-intercept. What does it represent? Now remember, to find the x-intercept in this form, standard form, you substitute in 0 for y and you solve for x. But if I put in a 0 for y, 4 times 0 is just 0, so the y's just disappear. So we'll just have 2x equals 1,000. Now obviously to solve that you would divide by 2, and that would give us an x-intercept of 500. Now x, remember, represents the number of shirts sold. So this means we're going to need to sell 500 shirts if we want to make $1,000. If we only sold shirts. So 500 shirts could raise $1,000. Sick. We're going to do the same thing with the Y, and remember the Y represented sweaters. So it'll be the number of sweaters if we just sold sweaters to get $1,000. So if we substitute in 0 for x, we would have 4y equals 1,000. Cute. So here we'll divide by 4. 1,000 divided by 4 is 250. What does it represent? Well, that means we'd have to sell 250 sweaters. And that could raise $1,000. Now, obviously, we don't need to just sell shirts or just sell sweaters, but if we did, that's how many we would need to sell in order to raise that 1,000 bones for our trip. Now, there could be a combination. I wonder if we're going to have to find that maybe on the next slide. Who knows? Who even knows? What the heck? Classmate makes a quick graph of your equation. The graph is shown at the right. Is the graph correct? Why or why not? And if not, use the x and y intercepts to make a quick graph. So if you recall, our old equation was like 2x plus 4y equals 1,000. And the x represented the number of shirts. And we came up with x equals 500 shirts. And then for the y, it came out to y equals 250, and those were our sweaters. So the y is the up and down axis. Great, number of sweaters sold. But it should be 250. It shouldn't be at 500. They got them flip-flopped. So the y-intercept should be here at 250. The x-intercept should be the one that's at 500, because that's the number of shirts. So we're going to have to keep this chart going here. Let's see, so it's like 50 per line. So here would be 300, 350, 400, 450, and we're going to extend it a little bit and make it 500 over there. Fun! So it should be crossing over there at 500. If we were to connect these dots, now look, you can use a ruler. That's the great thing about rulers. I can't do that up here, but we got some options. If you look, we could figure out the slope. Remember, slope is rise over run from left to right. So this is at 250, so it's going down 250, and it's going over from 0 to 500. So you would simplify that fraction. You might not know what goes into those. That's okay. I see they both end in a 0, so we could divide by 10. 25 and 50 are a little bit easier for a lot of people. 25 goes into 50 2 times. So our slope is -1/2. So you could keep going down 1, right 2, and that could give you some extra points if you were worried about your line being extra straight. Or just use a ruler. That's the great thing. All right, so no, the graph was off. They had the x and y axis in the wrong spot. They graphed the x-intercept on the y-axis. They graphed the y-intercept on the x-axis. They just had them flipped. Number 5. Determine 3 possible numbers of shirts and sweaters to sell that will make your class reach its goal. Let's kind of just create a little chart. Here's shirts and sweaters. So basically we're looking for coordinates that show up on that line. So I see we have a coordinate here, and that represents 100 shirts and 200 sweaters. So 100 shirts, 200 sweaters. Cool. We need 3 of them total. So here's another one. And this represents 300 shirts and 100 sweaters. Heck, you could get real wild and say, ooh, 400 shirts and 50 sweaters. That would be halfway to 100. So that was 400 shirts and 50 sweaters. No, you should double check these in your brain. If you had something like this on a quiz and you got some extra time, remember, you get $2 for each shirt that you guys sell. So if I sold 100, that would be $200. If I sold 300, that'd be $600. If I sold 400, that would be $800. The sweaters, we get $4 for each one of them. So 200 times 4 would be $800. 100 times 4 is $400. And 50 times 4 is 200. So this should add up to $1,000. $200 plus $800 is $1,000. 600 plus 400, what? Another 1,000. 800 plus 200, they all give you $1,000 towards your trip. Fun. Number 6, assume your school has 500 students. How many shirts and sweaters do you think your class can reasonably expect to sell and still reach its goal? Why? You could look at any of those combinations. Which one seems more realistic? I don't know. Honestly, to me, I think it'd be easiest for them to sell 500 shirts, right? Because it's going to cost less to the consumer, and most people don't want like a whatever school you belong to shoelace tying competition shirt. Like you'll wear it twice, right? So you don't want to invest $68 into a sweater if you're only going to wear the thing twice. So I think their best bet is to sell 500 t-shirts and no sweaters, and they would probably meet their goal. But hey, you might have a different opinion. That's the beautiful thing. Such a beautiful thing. All right. But this is crazy. If my class can raise a total amount of $1,500, we get to go on 2 field trips. Extra 500 bones, we get a whole nother day off school. How great. Write a linear equation that represents the number of shirts and sweaters that your class needs to sell in order to raise enough money for both field trips. So remember, X was our shirts. We got $2 for each one of them. So it was like 2X. The sweaters were $4, so plus 4Y. But now instead of 1,000, we need $1,500. Find the X and Y intercepts. What does each intercept represent? We did this on the front. So it represents, if we just sold shirts, how many would we need to sell? If we just sold sweaters, how many would we need to sell? So for the X, we have 2X equals 1,500. We'll divide by 2 in a second. For the Y's, we have 4Y equals 1,500, and we'll divide by 4. So half of 1,500 is 750. So X equals 750. That's the number of shirts to sell in order to raise $1,500 if we just sold shirts. 1,500 divided by 4 would give us 375, and that represents the sweaters. So if we only sold sweaters, we would need to sell 375 to be able to get that 1,500 bones for both field trips. Use the X and Y intercepts to make a graph. Now Y represented our sweaters, so we'll label it. So here would be our sweaters. And then the X represents our shirts. Now our graph goes 10 by 10. So our biggest number is 750 divided by 10. We could go by 75s. And you could label every single one if you want, or you can label every other one. 75 plus 75 is 150. Plus another 150 would be 300. Plus another 450, or another 150 would be 450. The next label, 2 up from there, would be another 150, so we're up to 600. And then 2 more spaces would be another 150. We're up to 750. Oh yeah, we could use the same labels for the shirts. Every other space would be 150, meaning every one space would be 75. So here could be 150, 300, 450, 600, and 750. All right, so the sweaters was our Y, and it came out to 375, which would be right in the middle of 300 and 450. The shirts came out to 750. So again, you could kind of draw a line with a straight thing. Otherwise, you could figure out the slope. That's going down 375 over 750. Now 750 is 375 times 2. So again, our slope is going to be negative 1 over 2. So you could go down 1 space over 2, down 1 over 2, because we used the same scale here. Or just use a ruler. So again, we're going to do the same thing we did on the front. Determine 3 possible numbers of shirts and sweaters to sell to make your class reach its goal. So shirts, sweaters, we're looking for 3 coordinates there. So if I look at this point, that's 150 shirts and 300 sweaters. 150 shirts, 300 sweaters. If I were to grab another point, we could say 300 shirts. And then this is right in the middle of 150 and 300. Every marking is 75. So 150 plus 75 would be 225. So that's 300 shirts and 225 sweaters. And we need one more point there. Let's go with this one. 450 shirts, 150 sweaters. Now you can check that. You can multiply all the shirts by 2, all the sweaters by 4. All of those do add up to 1,500. Assume your school has 500 students. How many shirts and sweaters do you think your class can reasonably expect to sell and still reach its goal? Why? I don't know, man. That's kind of opinion based. But again, just like the front, I mean, you could sell your grandma a couple shirts. She would love that. And then you'd get there. I really think it's just going to be easier to sell the shirts. But maybe you're like, no, it's sweater season during this field trip, so it might be easier to sell the sweaters. I don't know. It's totally up to you. Use your opinion. Come up with what you think. I would think, let's sell 750 shirts. Buy one for yourself, get one for Granny, and you're gold. You're gold, pony boy. Look at that. That's how we do the activity for applications of Chapter 5. Oh, and it was fun. Boy, oh boy, was that fun.